What in the world, man?
Whoa.
I know. Come on, bro. Thought we was friends. Oh my gosh. Let me check this. Everything look good over here. What's up, people? Welcome to the Freedmen Collective. Stedman looking a little frozen. Ernest is
Oh
on.
no,
Oh,
I'm
there he
just being
is. He
real
moving.
still.
Oh, there he is. He alive. He alive and well. Man, we
I
got a
can't
lot
I
of
can't
stuff.
speak.
Well, you can speak now. You're good. There is no
All
issue.
right.
See, I know what I'm saying. Just keep that thing on mute, bro. We gravy. You can't talk over there. But
All
you can
right.
hear me through there, right? You can hear me through there, and you hear your voice coming back through there, right? Like when you mute it, you will hear it eventually if you're listening to the stream on Twitter Space.
Let me see.
Well, mute yourself before you start listening. Mute yourself on the live stream
It
before you.
might just be better to speak like this.
Interesting. Maybe so. Well, that ensures that I'm getting good audio from Twitter, and the audios from Twitter is really good. So this is
Just
interesting. Yeah, and it's not too delayed. I don't think so, man. Anyway, Stedman's on the line. We got Ernest on the line. Welcome to the Freeman Collective for February 8th, the second Tuesday in Black History Month. So I'm Darvell. I'm going to be trying to coordinate what we're doing here today because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. But I want to hand it over to Stedman, and then I want to hand it to Ernest to introduce themselves. Go on ahead with it, Steb.
Hey, people, it's your boy Conspiracy Brother. We're going to get here and try to dig into what is going on in the world around us today, this week, in this Freedmen's History Month. Let's dig into it. I'm really, I hope we can shed some light on some things, build on what we always talk about, because it's a continual process. We like to set the foundation every episode, then we continue to build upon that, call back on previous episodes, what we've talked about. So if you ever get the urge to look back in our catalog, you can see how there's a through line in cultural commentary from, last year when we started to today, fuckery, and us calling it out.
Yeah. Okay. What's going on, Ernest, man? I'm watching you. Let's see how that worked.
Yeah, what's going on, y'all? This Ernest, I'm touching base out here in Michigan, man. I got to talk to y'all through the Twitter because having some technical issues. We're gonna get them resolved though later on. No issues.
You know what though, man? Literally, like watching your mouth move and watching the audio come through on Twitter is pretty synced up really good. So I think this might not be a bad way to have you kind of co-monitor the Twitter. And so I gotta see if there's people raising their hands though. That's my only thing. So I don't know if you can see that. I should have made you like a co-host.
No,
we don't want to be
person
accused of appropriating missynced audio. So
what'd you say?
We don't want to be accused of misappropriating missynced audio culture. So make sure your lips match your words, Playboy.
They do. What were you saying, Ernest?
Yeah, I was saying that Misha, we got one person in the room. I was saying, Misha, you want to come on stage?
Yeah, I'll be looking forward. I mean, but you can't.
We're just having an interactive conversation. We're gonna first start out with the Joe Biden news and all of this news, but we're gonna end up jumping into some other topics.
What
this is actually very good news too. So everybody who voted for Joe should be happy because he's finally getting some. Especially
we getting some, y'all. We about to get some.
He's giving black people something. We have been asking him, why he haven't been providing anything. I didn't vote for him, but I mean, members of the black community, Freedmen community, have been asking, why haven't Joe been able to do anything for black people swiftly? And so I think y'all should be really happy. He's starting to get the ball rolling. This is good. So yeah, this is a good one. This is real good. Y'all should be proud of this. This is wonderful.
All right, y'all. So like he said, we about to get into this thing. So I'm gonna go ahead and share this article I'm gonna read through. This is from Black Enterprise, the #1 black digital media brand. So y'all can trust this information. As you know, it's gonna be some good informations, right? I ain't gonna say y'all wrong. Let's go ahead and share this little piece of gem here, and I'm gonna read some good stuff to y'all. Okay. So Black Enterprise is reporting. They are reporting. What are they reporting? Let's see here. Biden administration to fund the distribution of crack pipes and syringes to promote racial equity. Remember, this is Black History Month, so we about to promote some racial equity with crack pipes. Let me just read this, though. I don't know. This is a nice picture, though.
I had to unmute for this. I had a round of applause for this. It's about time he didn't come through for us. I appreciate that. It's about time. So I don't know. I just gotta give me another round. I would stand up, but I don't want to be embarrassing my co-host. Because I just got to say, I'm proud of that.
Oh, man. So, listen. On Monday, applications closed for the Biden administration's new $30 million grant program to provide crack pipes and smoking kits to promote racial equity. And this is wrong already. And this is Black Enterprise. I was not expecting this from Black Enterprise. Let me keep moving here, though. Starting this May, the harm reduction program will provide taxpayers funds to nonprofits and local governments that work to make drug use safer for addicts, the Free Beacon reports. Overseen by the Department of Health and Human Services, the grants will be allocated towards smoking kits and supplies that will provide pipes for users to smoke crack, smoke cocaine, crystal methamphetamine, and any illicit substance other than those are also included in the program scope. The program hopes the kits will reduce the risk of infection when doing drugs with glass pipes. It prioritizes the organizations that target underserved communities, including African Americans and LGBTQIA+ persons, to comply with President Biden's executive order on advancing racial equity. And here's a big quote. The purpose of the program is to support community-based overdose prevention programs, syringe services programs, and other harm reduction services, the grant said. Funding will be used to enhance overdose and other types of prevention activities to help control the spread of infectious diseases and the consequences of such diseases for individuals with or at risk of developing substance abuse use disorders. Hold on. Okay. Anyway, there have been mixed responses to the program, with some states opting out of the program altogether, while cities like San Francisco and Seattle have started distributing the kits already. Meanwhile, Republicans are blasting the program for using taxpayer dollars to aid in drug abuse, the New York or the Times News reports. Biden is sending free meth and crack pipes to minority communities in the name of racial equity, U.S. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida said. There's no end in sight for this lunacy. Last week, Biden talked about being tough on crime. Senator Tom Cotton, Republican of Arkansas, said. This week, Biden administration announced funds for crack pipe distribution to advance racial equity. President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been openly admitted to using crack, Times reports. Some critics argue the new program reflects the president's sympathy toward drug abuse because of his son. Funding for the program is provided through the American Rescue Plan and will last 3 years and includes 25 awards of up to $400,000. So, this is the thing, y'all. What do you think about this, Ernest, man? You coming from the Twitter space. Before I speak my piece, I need everybody else to kind of get theirs in because, you know, I'm going to go off for a couple minutes. But what you thinking about this, Ernest? Is this some good stuff or is this some warm stuff?
Shit, I think it's some bullshit, especially when it comes to, you know, racial equity. If we're talking about racial equity, you know, we got to always keep reparations in mind at all times. And I feel like when people don't have that in mind, they could damn near introduce anything and think that it's going to be okay for our community. You know what I'm saying?
This is true. This is true. And that's kind of the interesting component about this is that sometimes when you have policies that come out that sound like they're for everybody, there's a slight piece of information there that says, oh, they're set up for disadvantaged communities or minority communities, underserved communities. And that right there, like, you know, when it comes to money, I know you'll attest to, Stedman, when it comes to money and positive things, tangibles, when they say underserved communities, all of a sudden you see everybody who don't look like us show up and take the bag. But when it comes to free crack pipes, I wonder who's going to get all these free crack pipes. Well, hold on. Who's smoking the crack? Stedman, who's smoking the crack, man?
Hunter Biden.
Oh, is that what's going on? They're going to give him all to the well, he wasn't smoking crack. Why wasn't he smoking cocaine? Isn't cocaine where the folks with money go?
Joe Biden said that because there were so many single parent households, that's why black people were smoking crack. That's what he said back in the 80s. So I don't know what he's saying about his own household or any of that. But his son is a notorious crackhead. He got kicked out of the Navy Reserves for being a crackhead. He crashed a rental car being a crackhead. That laptop, they found video footage of him smoking crack on it. They got pictures online of him smoking crack. I mean, you know, I said this, you know, that's why I say it's a through line. from years ago about our show, a year ago to now. Because here's the thing. We talked about this last week with racism.
Mm-hmm.
When you allow people who don't have your best interests in mind to define the terms of race, racism, and racial equity, this is the kind of shit you get. Joe Biden is giving you crack pipes. Well, it's kind of good, though, because they've been giving you crack since when? Because we talked about that, too.
Think about that.
The CIA sent crack up here from Nicaragua. We talked about that, right? Again, it's a through line. So they've been giving you crack. They might as well finish the job, right?
So
this is the problem. We don't hold our elected officials accountable because we want to act like we have so much invested in the process. Oh, we got to get this guy out to elect this guy. And they both bad. They're both bad. Right? They're both bad. And in a way, one is worse because you elected the one with the intention of him doing something good for you. Right? You knew Trump wasn't shit and wasn't going to do shit for you. So every time he said anything, you always resisted it. But Joe Biden, who you put in office because you believed he was actually not, they say lesser of two evils, but you believed he was the better option. Now he's giving it to you with both barrels and you don't have nowhere to run because everybody in the media is quiet. All the celebrities that was talking for the last 4 years are silent because they're fine. They've been fine. The only thing that was bothering them was that they was embarrassed that their president was making them look like a fool in the national and international media. Now, even though Joe Biden looks like a fool, it don't affect them the same way because he's still willing to hold up the same old symbols of America that we're used to. This is why you got to mature and wake up, right? Why do you want to give people? I support decriminalizing drugs, but that's not what they're doing.
That's a very interesting point, right? If you decriminalize it, then we wouldn't have to be doing the dirty drug program, would we? They can just go buy the syringes, but then they ain't got no money because that's probably why they on drugs, because they're down on their luck, especially in their forget luck. We've been pushed down to the bottom cast. We've been made the bottom cast, and you can't even run a successful business. You're losing businesses at 80% startup rate. I mean, people putting their whole life on the line to try to be a business person because you sold us capitalism as a solution, but capitalism don't work if you don't have economic inclusion. I was just in a meeting today. Go ahead.
Well, no, capital. It don't work if you don't have capital.
Well,
we're the most undercapitalized group in this country.
Mm-hmm.
How you gonna be a capitalist? How you gonna be a capitalist and you can't get a loan? You can't get a loan and you got the same exact statistics as the white guy who going in for the loan, and you get higher rates, or you get denied, or you get told you got to do this and jump through this hoop. You got to pay for this extra insurance because you want to open your business in this neighborhood. Come on now. You want to be a capitalist.
No, we can't do it like that. That's not how it works. And so it's interesting because at the end of the day, like I was going to say, just that point you were mentioning, Stedman, about business is that if we're left off the table for that, and then you feed something like this to us from the side and claim it's for an equity situation, what we've basically put ourselves in the position of is saying that, we accept these crack pipes as openly as we accept his commentary that he made on what interview was that? Was that with was that the interview with Charlemagne?
When he said, Charlemagne, when he said, if you don't know if you for me or Donald Trump, you ain't black. So if you don't like crack pipes in your community, you ain't black. If you don't want free crack pipes, you ain't black.
That's the move. That's the energy right now out of the White House, y'all. If you don't like free crack pipes, you ain't black. That's wild.
And you know what's really wild though?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say what's really wild is that this was all they had. Like, instead of passing HR 40, which is just to build a study reparation, instead of doing something meaningful and impactful to the black community, they saying we're gonna help you bleed a little bit faster. We're gonna make the crack pipes free so that they can have more of them to use, and at least it'll be sanitized. That's the effort we'll make towards drugs and equity in America. Is that we're gonna do that. Like, you know, and we're not saying respond with mass incarceration like they did in the 80s and the 90s. We're saying respond with real solutions by giving these people a chance or a hope in America. Like, the only reason they would be taking this type of drug is due to a harsh reality and living in that life of disparity. You know what I'm saying?
Man, people just
my conspiracy brother senses is always tingling, right? And so there's a couple things I'm hitting on with this. There's a book I read this years ago called The Condemnation of Blackness, The Making of Race, Crime, and Modern Urban America. Or it's called Race, Crime, and the Making of Modern Urban America. It's written by Khalil Gibran Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad's grandson. And the book details the way that modern northern cities, urbanized cities, were created. Chicago, Cleveland, Detroit, Philadelphia. How the black sections of those cities were created and formed, you know, how they became the way that they were. And one of the things he talks about is that in the early 1800s, early 1900s to late 1800s, when you had high influx of immigrants from Italy and from Ireland and from Germany who were coming to America, they had to live with the blacks. They had to live with the former slaves in their neighborhoods, right? That's what they had to do. Or they had to live in also cast-off neighborhoods of immigrants. They didn't get to live with regular white people.
Right.
And so there was prostitution, there was crime, there was vice, what they called it. And what they did is the police would always make sure that they over-patrolled the white neighborhoods, not the white immigrant, the white native whites who were established. They would over-police those neighborhoods, and then they would allow all the stuff to exist in the black and new immigrant neighborhood. So what that did was essentially it gave the black neighborhoods the distinction of being recognized as houses or dens of vice and vicious, you know, negative activity, prostitution, drug use, gangs, guns, and all that. And so over time, because they under-policed the black neighborhoods, you knew if you were a white man, even if you were a decent white man, you know, in those times, I mean decent as far as social status, you knew if you wanted to see a prostitute, you had to go to the black neighborhood. If you were a prostitute, you wanted to work, you had to. And black neighborhood was full of black doctors, black teachers. They weren't criminals. There were black people that were forced to live in these red-lined areas who were just living their lives. But they had to live around pimps and whores. And you see what I'm saying? And so even with this program, they're not putting a meth clinic in Grosse Pointe.
No.
Right?
No.
They're not handing out free meth pipes and heroin needles in Grosse Pointe, which is Michigan. So it's a very affluent neighborhood that's right next to Detroit. Why not? They've told you already. We put them in low income. Well, black people, by and large, ain't doing meth. Black people ain't really doing crack like that no more either. But we're not really doing meth. We're not really doing heroin, right? The majority of heroin users now is white, suburban, and rural people. The majority of meth users, white, suburban, and rural people. But you put it in a low-income area, which is to say black, because you want the black community to continue to suffer under the constant pressure and presence of drug use, of vice, and of crime. That's what you're doing this for. Put the meth clinic in a white neighborhood where the meth heads is at. Right?
Yeah. They won't do that.
No, they won't do that because they don't want Grosse Pointe to become a meth den or a heroin den, right? Or a crack den. But they want your community to continue to be an area where you can come in and do drugs and commit crimes and terrorize your own family because you black and you stuck here and you have to deal with it. That's what's happening. It's a very good book to look at because it breaks down the red line. It breaks down how the laws were formed and created and why we're in these situations in a different way than some of the other books we've recommended. It's a very good book. It's very long, and it goes into a lot about sociology and understanding the sociological differences in the ways that America implemented laws from a psychological level, understanding how much education is a deterrent for crime. It's a great book, but this is all I see. It's a continuation of the process that they have been doing since we got free. Because you didn't need to give us drugs and lock us up and lock us out when we was free because you needed us to work. But after we outlived our usefulness, which is to say our life as machines, you got to figure something out for us. And this is it. We're going to put you in jail. We're going to make you have the bad homes, the bad schools, the dangerous neighborhoods. We're not going to put this in our community. So now it's flipped. Now it's the white communities are over-policed and the black over-policed the black communities are over-policed in a negative way, and the white communities are under-policed in a positive way, meaning you have a good relationship with your police officers. He might be a neighbor. He might be, your kids. His kids might go to school with you or your kids. And so it's a different process, but it's a very, very long and it's winding. And this is what y'all voted for.
So, okay, just to be clear, we are on both Twitter Space right now, as well as Facebook Live and YouTube Live. We got people calling in or listening in from various different places. So there are some visuals that are being shown if you're coming in from Twitter. But yeah, this is interesting. And it's very unfortunate that this is what we're dealing with in this time of the Black History Month. So, I mean, listen, this is nothing more the same in one sense, right, Ernest? Because we start talking about how people continuously try to underserve or actually reverse the strides of the Black community. And we get everything from, official government organizations furthering our self-harm to, folks who are running entire multi-million listener radio shows just dragging us as an entire community if they're not outright just telling us that we're monkeys. So I think there was something else we needed to kind of pivot into in order to start having a slightly different discussion. And also I want to double check, is the audio on the Twitter cutting out?
It's a little choppy for real. Like I got my headphones turned down, but y'all still coming through a little loud,
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me
just a little loud, maybe turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, I can bring that down to about there. Maybe that will help. We're gonna see. So anywho,
let me say, is it still the same now?
You want to make the volume lower, Darville?
I am making the volume lower over here.
And the thing I want to say too, the other issue is when you have people and you create a situation where you are intentionally trying to intoxicate them in some kind of way, what you're trying to do is use this to hide what you're actually doing. Like I said, I support drug decriminalization, legalization, because I believe that as a result of prohibition of drugs, we have created a system where drugs do what they do. The simple fact of making drugs illegal makes all drug users criminals. The same way it happened with alcohol. The second you made prohibition go away, right? Drinking alcohol wasn't a crime. So all those people in jail for alcohol, you're not a criminal anymore. But there needs to be a sensible way. There's a place in Switzerland. I watched this documentary, Russell Brand, because he used to do heroin. And it's a place in Switzerland where you can go and just shoot up or whatever. It's like this sterilized place. And it's like, he's a professor at a college. And he go on his lunch break and shoot up every day. And obviously we'd like to understand the sociological reasons, the psychological, the emotional reasons that a person wants to do drugs, right? We'd like to try to at the root of the reason why people feel like they need to turn to drugs or alcohol. But we also should be trying to find more compassionate ways to deal with drug abuse. But this is not the way. This is not the way, because here what you've done is said.
Go ahead. Wasn't that dude on the Breakfast Club? That professor?
No, that's a different one. He's in America. He's black. This guy is in Switzerland, but it's a guy here who's black. He does heroin every day too. He in New York City. He does heroin every day.
Oh, ooh. Well, you know what though? I guess. When we talk about, if we know that it's a disproportionate effect on us, when we just look at the data of who's still using these drugs, then knowing that alone, I think that if it's us, why anything is disproportionately against us or is a result of our condition. And this just feeds right back into the transformative social economic justice claim that we're making, right? Because if you can say there's anything about us that's worse off than the rest of the American population, it's always rooted all the way back through the accrued disadvantage, all the way back to how they decided to bottom cast us in this country. I'm not even going to say the S word because I'm going to call it the S word because so many people jump up and down talking about, oh, we got to let it go. Listen, you can turn slavery into a black box of unknown contents that all that which flows out is simply a certain attitude of America about us. And that attitude after emancipation resulted in all sorts of disadvantaging laws, policies, upside down treatment, and everything in between. So even if you push slavery off the top of this, if you just get rid of it out of your memory and you just say, well, magically at 1865 and 1867, all the way through those 60s, the 1860s through the 1870s, all these different laws and policies and blockages started showing up and Reconstruction failed and all these things occurred. And now we have a result of today from that. This always goes back to how they set us up. This is how it set us up. And so that's why the justice claim is so strong and why it is inescapable. And you don't even have to talk about slavery. You can leave it off the table because slavery was the nexus for their view on us in this country, because it doesn't have to be different in this country. Just because it's this country, it can be different or it can be the same as the rest of the world. But this country chose to do it a certain way, which is more in alignment with what people may consider to be global white supremacy. But here in this country specifically, this is the only country you're going to attribute white man enslaving the black folks to make the world's most powerful country. And that would not be the case if they had not done it. So even with that off the table, you know, we're still talking about the same type of failure from the accrued disadvantage that came from all the policies and the economic exclusion. So I don't know.
Yeah. My bad, I muted on the wrong one. But yeah, no, I was gonna say that, you know, thinking about our history and think about where we're at today, there's these illusions of progress, and we know it because we can look at the economic disparities that our people are currently in. I know, Darvell, you was just mentioning that most of this stuff stems back to slavery, and I would say what has occurred afterward in almost every industry in America. And so when we're looking at like our people, we need to recognize the history and the historical significance of some words, like the N word, right? I know most recently, you know, it was this whole commotion about Joe Rogan, which was a former like MMA fighter. He got his own podcast, got 190 million listeners. He's had multiple episodes where he's used the word and used like derogatory language towards Black Americans in general. And so in this article we got up, which is Joe Rogan's use of the N-word so far in the story, you could just go ahead and skip past this first two paragraphs. Yep, skip past that. Scroll down some more. All right, cool. So you can go up a little bit, Darvell, my bad. All right, we'll start right here. So it says, you know, Joe, he recently got in trouble because he basically had comments about COVID-19 and the misinformation spread around that. But in the last week, he's gotten into some trouble for his usage of the N-word and several comments that he's made as it relates to it. And so some of the comments that I want to read off that he actually said, and I got stuff on my end, Darvell. So one of the things I want to pull up is that he says, when you say the N-word, you're like saying like, here it cannot be spake. It cannot be uttered. It is a sacred word. It is like a magic word. You cannot, if you say it, Candyman will come. You know, it's very weird. It's very weird that we've ever allowed that. It's one thing like, you know, you could say spake, no one's going to get mad, you know, like it's not racially charged, you know. And so I feel like what he was trying to do is what most white folks try to do when they use the N-word in the sense of trying to be racist and derogatory towards Black people. When they use that word, you know, they know what that word is tied to from a racial standpoint and from our own historical lineage and lens. And no matter how they try to say it, it's always going to cut deep for our community. And it's always going to be a word that we're going to have to not take in lightly. We're not going to be able to let these people, you know, just utilize this word. I don't think we can stop people from using it because I think America always be racist, right? But the reality is we got to always have some sort of pushback to the mainstream media whenever they think that it's just okay to use the word or to even degrade and down our people. And the reason why is because it being Black History Month, we need to understand the importance of that word, the importance of how it's applied to our people, and the importance of how we need to move, to get our image in the I'll say, in order to get the image that we actually deserve as the Americans who built this country. You guys got anything you want to add so far?
Stedman?
I don't defend the use of this word by Joe Rogan. I haven't looked into the context. I'm not I've listened to his podcast a few times. I'm not like a hardcore listener. But what I will say is the thing that's interesting for me about the media push. Conspiracy brother again. Tinfoil Kufi time, right?
Yo.
A lot of this pushback came when he had guests on his show who spoke out about the vaccine. We know which one we're talking about. And the virus. We know which one we're talking about. Right? And so while what he said may be reprehensible, I don't dispute it. I never looked into the context. I never listened to try to figure out, because there's so much disingenuousness in the mainstream media that even if what he said was as bad as it is, I'd need to go and find like independent media sources to kind of give me more of a fair and balanced perspective. That's why they're doing what they're doing. And what we're going to show later with a list of certain celebrities and politicians who have done things of equal or greater value to this, who have still been able to exist in the world, in the media space or whatever, is that the common denominator between them is that they are now or have been members of the establishment as far as pushing mainstream narratives, right? No defense of what he said or what his intentions were. At the same time, Joe Rogan, I think, is 51 or 54. So when I lived in Georgia, I used to tell these guys I work with, I was Black. And this was like 2013. And so I said, honestly, we're in Georgia. I said, ain't no white man in Georgia born before 1956 that don't need his ass beat at least one time. And I'm just saying that based off of the statistical probability that as a white man in Georgia in the 60s, in the 50s, in the early 70s, that you have done some racially fucked up things, that your family has done it, that you have been around it, that you were born to accept and do it. And so to a large degree with Joe Rogan and white people of a certain age in America, and even very young white people our age and younger, I would be very surprised if every white person in this country had not at least said the N-word in private, even if it was just in their own mind at least one time. I would be surprised. I would be surprised. Now, you could tell me, no, I've never done it. And, that's your right to lie to my face as far as I see it. But I find it hard to believe that a white person in this country of a certain age, and that age is probably about 5, because that's really about the time you start talking and thinking, that you have never thought the N-word at least in your lifetime, at least one time. Even if it just, and I'm not, I'll even say, fine, you don't even have to count music. You could just count interactions. You thought it at least one time.
That's interesting. That's crazy. Now, here's the other thing I have to get into, though, right? Did you say, let me make sure I clarify this, Stedman. Did you say anybody in this country haven't thought of it, or just white folk?
Well, I mean, non-Black people, anybody who ain't an African-American descendant of freedmen, or somebody, even Black people, anybody.
How about Black immigrants?
We say it. You know what I'm saying? Now, you have some Black people who say they don't say it because of the connotation. And I believe, that there are Black people who don't say it.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I believe there are some Black people who don't say it. But I believe, if you white, I believe, I don't believe you have never not even thought it one time. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
So, yeah, that's a good point. Let me so you mentioned there are Black people who don't say it. I'm one of those folks. I don't say it. I don't like it being used in reference to me. I mean, people will say it about others, and I'm like, okay, you know, that's your expression about other people, but don't ever include me in that that target demographic when you're referring to me. And the people who are close to me know that, or who just know me in basic terms anyway. But I do still have a sensitivity if anybody who is not a freedman uses it. I have a sensitivity in that because I feel like it's not it. First of all, we already talked about how bad of a connotation this word has um with our people from an external standpoint, right? The word was crafted and coined in America to denote the progeny of slavery, the people who are the descendants of the institution that their ancestors were abused by. And we had to bear the load of that word and all the infamous, all the horror that came with that. We've had to deal with that for 400 years. And it was created by a white man. Yes, you can argue that it's a derivative of other languages, and you can start talking about the etymology of the word and whatnot, but that's not the point here because we're in America. And as you know, America is almost a silo unto itself because it makes the world listen to it and it doesn't listen to the world. So with that being the case, when you have white people using a tool against us or otherwise disparaging us with a tool they created, the last thing I need is anybody who looks like me coming in and using that tool also. If they use it to disparage me, that's a problem. But I also would warn them against using it to identify with me or to use it to identify themselves as one of my people, not to be, grading blackness or anything like that, or trying to, police it. But in the same sense, you don't want to be part of this that we're in. And you're not really part of it, to be honest with you. If you don't have the inherited disadvantage that's psychological at this point, beyond just economic and social, it's now also psychological, the depravity that we're fighting through. The reason why the hoods are literally what they are and literally how people behave. If you are not anchored in that, if you are not built from that, if you did not come through that in a way where like your blood is on that concrete generationally, multi-generations, then it's just something you should leave alone. Now, I think as I was updating the documents for the Freedmen Agenda League, I was writing. Actually, I got a good question yesterday. I was doing not yesterday, on Sunday. I got a good question. I was doing an interview for a candidate for my other organization. And he asked me, he said, "Hey, how do you define blackness?" He asked me this in a space where we have never been asked that question because we let people self-identify, and we got everybody coming through the door. And that's what it's supposed to be for that particular organization. We got white folks coming through the door. They're not identifying as black, but we also don't hold our doors closed to anybody based on their race. But when we talk about the organization being black by name, it's anyone who self-identifies with by black, who's our target demographic in that space. But when it comes to FAM, or the Freedmen Agenda League of Michigan, we understand we're talking specifically about freedmen. Those are the people who are the descendants of those formerly enslaved Africans in this country. At that time, that's all we had. And now we know who we are, because we are now literally genealogically different, right? You go and you pull up a freedman's DNA makeup, right? You're going to have all sorts of stuff mixed in there. And that's kind of why the Wakanda thing jumped off so hot, because people are totally disconnected from any African continental connection, in the sense of, I know my tribe, I know my country, because we're not purebred like that. We're a totally different breed at this point. We're still black, but we're a different ethnicity or ethnic group within the black overall global community. And with that ethnic group, unfortunately, of the north of the United States, we have this word that's been used against us. So we don't want anyone using that word who isn't the progeny of that word, who isn't the descendant of that word, because it is very charged. Now, you may see us using it about ourselves, but that's part of the psychosis, or the psychological disembodiment that's occurred over the many hundreds of years of oppression and disenfranchisement and all the different things that we have endured and are still enduring. So people come into us and they say, well, it's because black people don't do this, we don't do that, we think backwards, we do all this other stuff. Listen, I'm not going to accept everything that people say, but I will accept that the fact is, we have been forced into a state of thinking that we do need that lineage therapy, as Yvette Carnell spoke on many times. We do need that psychological assessment to be done in the reversal of all the failure that's been like wired into our brain. But if you're not that, don't use it. Same thing. And that we already know the white folk we ain't supposed to be using no matter who they are. But when it comes to anybody outside of the freedmen using that word, it's a problem for me. I just think it's not constructive to use it. And so
no, it's a problem for me too. I think the bigger problem for me when people use that word is the fact that they know what they're doing. And so we at a point in society where some people try to use it to provoke a black person or a freedman into what, into like, I would say a kind of position where either we're going to react emotionally or where we're going to lash out. You know what I'm saying? And so if we're really looking at how some people use this word, it's almost like taunt us. It's after all of this time in 2020, all of these years and all these centuries that have passed, we're in 2022, and we got people who use the word and say they don't use the word, and there's still people who move racially, and the system is still set up racially, and we're still losing, and we're still bottom casted. So it's almost like, today when people use that word, it's just a reminder that we really have made it to this point in society that people like to think was achieved in the civil rights era.
So looking at this though, how blackface, what is this connection to blackface?
Yes. Go ahead.
You want me to go?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's connection to blackface?
Well, it was the second thing. No, Ernest put this up. It's the second link, Ernest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. No, so for this link, when I was putting up this link for the history of blackface, I feel like I just wanted to go through the article to kind of look at the true history of blackface in America, because a lot of folks don't realize that the reason why these immigrants or these white Americans see us the way they do is because of how history has portrayed us. And that ultimately is the image that is stemmed from slavery and that still impacts us to this day.
You want me to read a little bit of it?
Yeah, go ahead and read a little bit of it.
So this piece, like he's talking about, is over on history.com. And so it starts out with the portrayal of blackface when people darken their skin with shoe polish, grease paint, or burnt cork. And then they also paint on enlarged lips and other exaggerated features. It's steeped in centuries of racism, this practice. So it peaked in popularity during an era in the United States when the demands for civil rights by recently emancipated slaves triggered racial hostility. And today, because of blackface's historic use to denigrate people of African descent, its continued use is still considered racist. So there are various forms of blackface, and I think we're going to talk about that because blackface isn't always just grease paint or shoe polish on your face. So just be careful about that. It's about to become a really interesting conversation. But I will just go on and finish these next two paragraphs, Ernest. But it says here that they're talking about blackface right now. Blackface is an assertion of power and control. A professor, David Leonard, of Comparative Ethnic Studies and American Studies at Washington State University says, it allows a society to routinely and historically imagine African Americans as not fully human. It serves to rationalize violence and Jim Crow segregation. Although the exact moment when blackface originated is not known, its roots date back centuries to European theatrical productions, most famously Shakespeare's Othello. The practice then began in the United States in the 18th century when European immigrants brought the genre over and performed in seaports along the Northeast, says Daphne Brooks, a professor of African American Studies and Theater Studies at Yale University. And this last line says, but the most famous sort of era to think of as being the birth of the form itself is the antebellum era of the early 19th century.
She must be 20th, because right. The early 19th will be the 1800s. That'd be the early 1800s.
That
so
could
she
be
must
right.
mean early 20th, because that has to be where she means late. Late. So antebellum means after. Oh no, antebellum is before the. No, that's before. My bad.
Before slavery. But yeah, I was gonna say she was talking about the whole 1800s in general, because you see later on in the article she talks about how the minstrel shows were born. You know what I'm saying? And that caricature of Jim Crow, and these are basically white folks running through the South putting blackface on and performing for other whites, but demeaning black people in the worst ways possible. I think as we watch the evolution of blackface, we watch the degradation of black people in America in different ways. And we can look at certain cartoons. I had put a clip in there, Darville, of a video for the cartoon, but you don't have to cue it up. I would just tell folks to go on YouTube and look up, blackface and cartoons, and you'll see that Disney had a slew of cartoons that, were ultimately consumed by black kids, where we had to watch ourselves be, degraded and demeaned in some form of fashion. And those kids ultimately who, had to watch that Disney, be it in the 80s, 90s, or even the 60s, they basically went through the same thing their parents had to do when they could only watch, white people perform blackface on television in the 1920s, and so to say. And, I figured that's, there's something I just wanted to add in there.
Hey, do you want to look at the Fair State piece? I think that might.
Yeah. Pull up the Fair State piece, because
the N-word and caricature.
Yep.
Let me read
this. Is that Whoopi Goldberg's house?
Is that Whoopi Goldberg's? Oh, she does have stuff in her house, right?
She does.
That's the Jim Crow Museum out at Ferris. I might have to check it out. I looked at the DVD.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep.
So
I never even heard of that. That should be something that the state of Michigan, you should know about that. Shouldn't be something that you have to.
Yeah, some black guy started it up, but basically in the past he figured it was going to be important to preserve all of the racist artwork. So that was his mission, and he ended up creating the museum and donating all of the pieces to Jim Crow.
So it says here that this, just before you go on, Ernest, just to give people a synopsis of Jim Crow Museum, in this piece of the N-word and caricature, what it says beginning is there's a direct and strong link between the N-word and anti-black caricatures. Although the N-word has been used to refer to any person of known African ancestry, okay, we'll hold that. It is usually directed against blacks who supposedly have certain negative characteristics. The coon caricature, for example, portrays black men as lazy, ignorant, and obsessively self-indulgent. There are also traits historically represented by the N-word. Now, these are also traits historically represented by the N-word. The brute caricature depicts black men as angry, physically strong, animalistic, and prone to wanton violence. This depiction is also implied in the N-word. The Tom and Mammy caricatures are often portrayed as kind, loving friends of whites. They also are presented as intellectually childlike, physically unattractive, and neglectful of their biological families. These latter traits have been associated with blacks generally and are implied in the N-word. The word was a shorthand way of saying that blacks possessed the moral, intellectual, social, and physical characteristics of the coon, brute, Tom, Mammy, and other racial caricatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my bad. I keep doing that. But no, I was gonna say, yeah, that's a fact. Man. To jump a little bit down in the article, I do want to pick up some key things. I would say that when we're looking at the N-word today, we would even also state that it is used towards specific ethnic groups of the black race, and that it's not necessarily used against all black people. But that'll be something, from a race standpoint, other blacks will obviously push back against. I think us and the freedmen or the descendants of slaves, we really understand how it gets weaponized by all different groups of people, no matter the color. But inside of the article, there's a section right next to this N-word hair N-word hair, smoking tobacco image. It says all racial and ethnic groups have been victimized by racial slurs. However, no American group has suffered as many racial epithets as blacks. Coon, Tom, Savage, Pickaninny, Mammy, Buck, Sambo, Jigaboo, and Buckwheat are typical. Many of these slurs became fully developed pseudo-scientific, literary, cinematic, and everyday characters of the African American. These caricatures, whether spoken, written, or reproduced in material objects, reflect the extent, the vast network of anti-black prejudice. And so once that's said, they go on to use. They said the N-word carries with it much of the hatred and repulsion directed towards Africans and African Americans.
Okay.
Historically, the N-word defined, limited, and mocked African American. It was a term of exclusion, a verbal justification for discrimination, whether used as a noun, verb, or adjective. It reinforced the stereotype of lazy, stupid, dirty, and worthless parasite. And no other American it says no other American ethnophilism carried so much purposeful venom as the following representative list suggests. They got N-word.
They got a lot.
I gotta say the words.
Hold on, wait a minute. Hold on. Before you get to that, I know it's gonna it's gonna get heavy. So just in case anybody doesn't like it, just be aware it's about to get real heavy. But I did want to ask you something though. One of the things that has stood out to me over these past two paragraphs that is kind of counter to my position or my thought is that what did it say? It said the N-word carries with it much of the hatred and repulsion directed toward Africans and African Americans. So would you say, before we explain a little bit more about what this N-word really means, would you say that there is an argument that the N-word is against all blacks, period, not just those who descended from American slavery?
No, I wouldn't. That's why I would say I'm making the opposite argument. Say that, it is weaponized in a way historically that has been specifically aimed at the Black American, that one who descended from American slavery. Now, other groups have example where they've been called the word, but when we're looking at our history, this word has been weaponized against us. It has been used in the media, it is used in representation. It's almost, if we're looking at this list of words that we're about to say, I don't believe that our African brothers and sisters were subjected to this level of racism.
Okay.
Even if they were called it. So let's say like our African brothers and sisters who live in New York and Florida, surely a white person has called them a nigger. Yes. But have they called them all of these names in the book of what it means to be, you know what I'm saying? Like what it means when they truly disrespect, this whole long list that is pretty much tied to the history of America. So to read off the list, first word, got the N-word, nigger. Second word, niggerish, acting in an indolent or irresponsible manner. The third word, nigger lipping, wetting the end of a cigarette while smoking it. Fourth word, nigger lover, a derogatory term aimed at whites lacking in the necessary loathing of black. Fifth word, nigger luck, an exceptionally good luck, emphasis on the underserved. Sixth word, nigger flicker, a small knife or razor with one side heavily taped to preserve the user's finger. The seventh word, nigger heaven, a designated place, usually the balcony, where blacks were forced to sit, for example, in an integrated movie theater or church. Nigger knocker, an axe handle or weapon made from an axe handle. Nigger rich, deeply in debt but ostentatious. Nigger shooter, a slingshot. Nigger steak, a slice of liver or a cheap piece of meat. Nigger stick, a police officer's baton. Nigger tip, leaving a small tip or no tip in a restaurant. Nigger in a woodpile, a concealed motive or unknown factor affecting the situation in adverse way. And then nigger work, the meaning and menial task. Like when we look at this extensive list and these definitions, this is tied to a history in America that is unique solely to America. These words weren't used in the UK, even though they speak English.
Whoa, that's a good hold up right there. Keep going.
No, that's the bar right there. That these words weren't used against people in the UK. even though they have Black people, and even though that those people from that area speak English, and they have Irish people, and they have some of these Anglicans from America. But what we have seen is in America, a unique culture was developed around these words. And if you go to the Library of Congress, you'll find 30,000 documents that references all of these words, in addition to nigger in various forms and fashions, from children's stories all the way down to, science, like science of that day and science of that era. So
look at this.
Sam, you got it. Okay, yeah, you got it up right now. So yeah, there's 30,000 documents. And if you look in at the time periods, which is a little bit below, you got 27,000 mentions of the N-word in the newspaper. But if you're looking at time period from 1800 to 1899, there was 20,000 documents that contained the N-word in some form or fashion. Like, this is what our ancestors literally had to put up with, where it was an everyday, regular attitude that white people could call them that and talk about them in this way and demean them this way. And it wasn't just, the Anglican white folks, the white folks from the UK or the Irish, Scottish, and, Anglo-Saxon. These were also other white groups like Germans, the Jews. In New Orleans, there was because I was trying to look up information about like Blackface, and then also try to find something that we can compare it to, because I was wondering if any other ethnic groups had a face that they opposed. And there was this thing called Jew face, which the Jewish community heavily opposes today. But when we're looking at like Blackface and the history of that, we need to recognize that almost every other minority group in some form or fashion, except for the Black ones, have participated or have willingly tried to use that to debase the Negro.
You know what?
Hold on. Here's the specific example. The specific example that I wanted to use was for the Jewish community, where in like the 1800s, like shortly after emancipation, they actually had a problem with Negroes receiving the same education as Jewish. Basically being placed in the same school as Jewish kids. And so it was in the article, these Jewish writers were basically stating how the nigger has no mind like the Jew, and that we should never be compared to each other, and all of these things. And they actually specifically targeted Booker T. Washington. And I want to pull up the specific article, but I'm gonna go ahead and let you go, Sid, so I can pull that article
up. Paul Mooney had a joke. It was a joke, but it was more just like a joke on the actual song. But like, how you say "eeny, meeny, miny, mo." Catch a tiger by the toe. It wasn't tiger, because tigers don't yell, and you ain't playing with the tiger's feet either. So that's the like Paul Mooney got the little joke. That's what it used to be. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Catch a tiger by the toe. If he holler, let him go. And so that was what it was. But so yeah, it wasn't tiger. You can guess what it was. Everybody in here is smart enough.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let me pop over here. We got to pop into some. I need not only a fair and balanced argument, but I just want to see if you have anything for this, Ernest. I went to the ultimate dictionary, the ultimate encyclopedia, Wikipedia. It's about to cause us some problems. I'm sorry. All right, so let me just look at this. They just say the N-word is an ethnic slur typically used against Black people, especially African Americans, because it's considered extremely offensive, even if only mentioned and not used as a slur. It is often referred to by the euphemism, the N-word. It is also in use with more neutral meaning among African Americans, primarily with the ER changed to an A. Scrolling down to the etymology and history, they had the nerve to put this.
That's always a funny sticking point for me. That we try to act like it's a different word, because like that's just kind of how we talk in general. So that's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, most of us don't say, "Hey, brother." You know what I'm saying? I don't say, "I'm conspiracy brother." You know what I mean? I'm conspiracy brother. So is brother a different word than brother? Right. Is mother a different word than mother? You know what I'm saying? So that to me, that like, if you don't feel comfortable to say it, don't say it as a freedman. I don't, but I feel like when people try to make these little weaselly ways, like it's a different word, then it's just like, come on, man.
That's skirting around the point.
Yeah, you don't have it in your heart to say it. Don't say it. It's the same word.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that, because in that Ferris State article, It says the final usage as a term of endearment is especially problematic. Sup, nigga has become almost universal greeting among young urban blacks. When pressed, blacks who use the N-word or its variants claim to follow. It has to be understood contextually. Continual use of the word by blacks will make it less offensive. It is not really the same word. Because whites are saying the N-word and N-words, but blacks are saying N-word with an A at the end, it is just a word. Blacks should not be the prisoners of the past or the ugly words which originated bad. These arguments are not convincing. Brother or brother and sister or sister are terms of endearment. Nigger was and remains a term of derision. Moreover, the false dichotomy between blacks and African Americans and N-words should be opposed. No blacks are N-words, irrespective of behavior, income, ambition, clothing, ability, morals, or skin color. Finally, if the continued use of the word lessens its sting, then the N-word would by now have no sting. Blacks beginning in slavery have internalized the negative images that the white society cultivated and propagated about black skin and black people. This is reflected in the periods of self-insane race loathing. The use of the N-word by blacks reflect this loathing, even when the user is unaware of the psychological forces at play. The N-word is the ultimate expression of white racism and superiority, no matter how it is now. And that's what they had in there. So I found that interesting that you said that.
Yeah, it's interesting because it shows that we've internalized it, but it's interesting. That's why I wanted to bring up this Wikipedia piece, because we've internalized it, but they're saying that where was this quoted? Okay, it said during the 18th, let me zoom in on this for my peoples. Yeah, during the late 18th and early 19th century. Why is that delayed? Where is it going? What is it doing? It's not showing y'all the quote, is it? What the
heck?
Nope. Yeah, froze. I just looked over there and it had
Freedmen
frozen.
internet.
Oh no. Yeah, the Freedmen internet. Oh boy. Let me see. Here we go. Let's get this back popping. So anyway, y'all can see it now. During the late 18th and early 19th century, the N-word also described an actual labor category, which African-American laborers adopted for themselves as a social identity, and thus white people use as a descriptor word, as distancing or derogatory epithet, as if quoting black people in their non-standard language. Where did this come from? They got the source listed. The etymology of the N-word, resistance language and politics of freedom in the antebellum North, Journal of Early Republic, etymology of N-word. So they're saying there is a piece from 2016 that indicates that we adopted this ourselves, and then white people started using it.
Sound like
we need to double
justify something to me.
Are they trying to twist up history? Is this accurate history?
Well, Wikipedia is very tricky, bro. I use it frequently, but as I've gotten older and a little bit more aware, it's a very tricky platform.
I agree.
It's very tricky.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to share that.
I'd like to
go ahead.
If Ernest, do you have anything else you want to show?
He's got some links here. I was going to show this Jewish thing real quick that he had.
See, so that Jewish thing, I wanted to, because this is the kind of interesting thing about Joe Rogan, right? So a lot of people, I have listened to some of his videos, and has a lot of different people from political, both sides of the political aisle, right? But what happens is a lot of people on the right, libertarians, Republicans, alt-right people, they just assumed and thought that Joe Rogan was an alt-right Republican person too. So a lot of them came on his show maybe in the early, or not the early, but like maybe the 2016, like around Trump's time in office, expecting kind of to have a home, because he lets anybody on his podcast. Like, he's really not doing a news show. He's just doing a podcast, having a conversation with people. He used to be a comedian. I mean, he's a comedian. He did Fear Factor. He does announcing for MMA. So like, he has kind of just a real laid back entertainment lifestyle, and he just has a podcast. Same way if we had a podcast and we had enough clout to have different guests come on and want to talk to us. And so a lot of, and I've said this before, we talked about him, a lot of his issue is he doesn't always offer the, I feel like, adequate pushback on certain things that people say. But in a way, he has his own kind of disarming style about how he'll push back. That, I mean, it works to a degree if you're interested in watching the show. And he's got a clip where he's talking to Ben Shapiro, who is a notorious Jewish conservative man from California. And he always got some crazy ass tape. He sounds like somebody's put a tape fast forward when he talks. But it's a clip of him and Joe Rogan talking, and it deals with this. And that's the thing. Joe Rogan is he's a very multifaceted individual. And I feel like a lot of people try to pin him down. And if you don't listen to him, you won't really understand that nuance about him. And so I think it'd be good for us to listen to the clip. It's about 3 minutes, but it deals with immigration, black people, white immigrants, and all that. But and like I said, Ben Shapiro is Jewish, so I think it's extremely pertinent given this article here.
Wow. You know what? And I got two things, so I got to do this. I got to respond to this to make sure we know what the heck's going on. But I got to show a quote that I got to show something from Yvette because it's very, very pertinent, because it tells you where we really are, and people don't really want to have this discussion. And so Yvette said, she's showing this quote here. So this idea to stop Black American hate, which is what we're talking about tonight, because there's this guy, Gad Said. Is that his name? Said? I don't know if y'all seen this already. Sad said, Jews have been the most persecuted people in history. They were nearly exterminated. I escaped persecution in Lebanon because I'm Jewish. And yet I don't wilt away at hearing some idiot use anti-Semitic words. I'm not a fragile flower. Enough with the hysteria around the N-word. He said that just a couple days ago. Yvette had a very clear message about this. This is not specific to Joe Rogan controversy, but let me pinpoint one thing. Gad, as an individual, doesn't need to react to anti-Semitic slurs because the ADL does it on his behalf. The Jewish community has working organizations that inflict consequences. We don't. That's why we have to get up in arms as a people, from the grass all the way up to the damn top of the trees, because there is no NAACP smacking this dude to the ground unconscious. There is no Urban League threatening his family. There is no Black Lives Matter outside of his house. And you guys think that these organizations are doing something for us. These organizations are dead. One of them is stealing money from you. The other one is caping for everyone except us. And the third is nearly just a shell for laundering money. The Urban League. They just get money. The NAACP, what are they doing? Like, people go over there and they think they're doing something. What are y'all doing? Helping a few people get out of jail?
I'll say this: that comment that he made is a lie, because you got Jewish people who will call you anti-Semitic for saying that Israel is oppressed Palestine. And I'll land with that.
You say kind of say that again, so I'm sure I'm clear on it.
My bad. I said the reason why his tweet isn't true is because you got Jewish people as individuals who will call you anti-Semitic for stating that Israel is oppressing Palestine.
So, okay, from saying something.
Yeah, so just from stating like
reacting to that stuff. Just as much as we react to the N-word.
Hey, look, you ain't even got to go that hard, bro. Whoopi Goldberg got sat down for 2 weeks for saying Jews was white. You know? That's ultimately what she said. The Holocaust wasn't racial because Jews is white people too. That's what she said. And she got sat down for 2 weeks. Now, I like free speech. I'm a free speech advocate. You know how y'all guys know how I am. Some of you listeners know how I am. I'm a free speech first. So if it means that we can have the right to free speech and I can say what I want to say, I'd rather have a person allowed to say anything offensive. because I understand that the censorship doesn't stop when I want it to stop. It stops when the people upstairs want it to stop. But we need to understand, too, that this is not accurate. But, yeah. So,
I mean, that's true. I think that, you know, that's still fair. Your observation, Ernest, you know, I didn't realize that, you know, because you made a very good observation to give a contrast to what he's saying. But I think that this point here about the fact that no matter what's going on, we ain't got nobody who willing to go to bat for us as an entire community is still pertinent. It's sad.
But I mean, when have we ever had that? Like, to literally stop the degradation of our community? Because when you just showed those 30,000 documents that were in Congress, we need to recognize on the federal and state level, we were being degraded at every chance and opportunity, especially in the education system. Like, when think about what they were teaching our grandparents about themselves. Like this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we ever had it, but I'm saying to be in a world today where we are running around talking about even Black Lives Matter, or I have my contemporaries wanting to run and be part of the NAACP, thinking they're going to do something for our community, or some of these grifters that are running around Detroit, because that's kind of why I got an issue with some of the fabric, the social fabric in Detroit, is because there's so many fucking grifters. But that's what you get in a community that's been deprived, and the floor is so low that people can make a business out of trying to get you up into your own bed. But anyway, sorry.
You brothers don't sound happy about the free crack pipes, and I really don't get it.
But so I'm sorry. I think what I'm saying is that man, that grifter thing really took me out of alignment. When I just seen something the other day. I got to talk to y'all as to whose man's is this. But man, it's geez, what was I gonna say, man? I don't know what y'all got to say.
The crack pipe threw you off, see?
Oh man. Okay.
But I put a clip.
Okay, where is it?
It's the one that's labeled 6 minutes to about 9 minutes. So it's about a 3-minute clip. It's Joe Rogan talking to Ben Shapiro. And so I just think it's good. And there's another clip I got. These three brothers who are kind of behind this Joe Rogan situation blowing up like it has.
Oh, really? There's a couple brothers that started to pop off about it?
Yeah, 3 brothers. One of them is Colin Kaepernick's lawyer. So this is Ben Shapiro.
Okay. I'm gonna play it for a couple seconds here, but hold on. Let me make sure the audio is shared before I start it so it don't mess up.
But yeah, it's 3 brothers, and they're talking to Dave Portnoy, who is the president founder of Barstool Sports, the Barstool Media and Sports Organization. And so it's a much shorter clip, but it's interesting, you know, that one too.
All right, let's go ahead and just play a quick clip of this real quick.
But historically, it's fairly recent. If you go from the civil rights movement to 2020, we're really not talking about that much time. We're talking
3 generations.
Oh, you good? Keep going.
50 plus years,
60 years. Yeah. I mean, it's
50 plus.
Right.
But in the world of, you know,
in the vast span of human history, it's not
a very small amount of time.
Right.
So clearly there's some impact of both racism and then Jim Crow laws. So that's where I'm saying there's a middle ground.
Yeah, and it is important for people on my side of the aisle, conservatives, to acknowledge and recognize the importance of history in people's living situations now. And it's important for people on the other side of the aisle to, at the same time, not attribute every single thing to history, because
but
people
isn't there
who are
always something like that? There's always like extremes on each position, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, but I don't think that it lies as far in the dead center of that as people, I think, want it to. What I mean by that is the problems that have plagued communities in the United States, not just the Black community in the United States, but problems of racism or problems of sexism. The way those get alleviated is people making better choices over time. Right? That is the problem. That's the way that those issues get alleviated. When Jews arrived in the United States in the early 20th century, to talk of my people, when they came, they were impoverished. They didn't speak the language. They were banned from country clubs. There was open discrimination against them. They were banned from Harvard. Right? Harvard Law School had quotas on Jews. The way to fight against that is to make good decisions. And so the you fight against the system to make sure that the system has rules that apply equally to everyone.
Right, but you clearly see that there's a big difference between people coming over here willingly and doing so in order to better their lives versus someone whose ancestors were dragged over here to be sold as property, and then dealing with the repercussions of that being your family history and red line laws and all the other things that were put in place to sort of keep them in very specific areas, which to this day remain crime-ridden, gang-ridden, deeply impoverished communities.
Well, that's true, but the question is how much of that is historic redlining and how much of that is an 18-year-old kid today deciding to pick up a gun and shoot somebody?
But how much of that 18-year-old kid today deciding to pick up a gun and shoot somebody is based on him growing up in this fucked up environment where that's what he models, where everything around him is crime and gangs, and you imitate your atmosphere, which what all humans do.
Right, but the answer is there's only one way to break that chain.
What way is that?
That way is to not pick up a gun and shoot somebody.
I think that's a simplistic way of looking at it if you're on the outside of that community and you're not one of those 18-year-old kids that grows up with the incredible influence of all the people around him, and that's all you see, and that's all you know.
Well, but the problem is the only way that's going to be the thing that your kid doesn't know is for you not to do it. At some point, personal agency has to come in.
It does,
because
education and teaching them about personal agency and letting them understand that there's a way out of this and that the path that they see being replicated over and over again by these people that wind up dying young, that wind up going to jail, that there are other options. There's a lot of kids that never get that other information, or if they get it, they get little blips of it, but the vast majority of the information, the vast majority of the influence they get is terrible.
Well, I totally agree with this. And this is why I think the worst thing that you can say to a kid is you're born behind the 8 ball, and no matter what you do, you're not.
Now, okay, so that was about exactly. But so this is the thing. So Ben Shapiro come here thinking, oh yeah, Joe Rogan's going to be on my side. And he's like, wait a minute, well, you know. And like I said, Joe Rogan has a very subtle style that he can disarm a lot of people. He did this to Jordan Peterson. He did this here. He's done this a few times, but this is what I'm talking about. You have a person who clearly.
Yeah, Carvel, it's an echo from your phone. You ain't muted.
Me?
No, Carvel ain't muted on the computer.
Oh. You got it now?
You got to mute up in the live stream, Carvel.
What is that?
The audio from Twitter bleeding over.
Oh, I think it's good now.
Yeah, it shouldn't have been an issue. I haven't changed anything.
But what happened, you can see how this agenda, and so, like I'm saying, Joe Rogan, I'm not going to defend any of his past N-word use or any of that. But his show is a very nuanced show, and the intention is to try to destroy him. Joe Rogan, every podcast gets 11 million listeners. Every podcast he puts out, and they're like 3 hours long. And I don't even listen to him. And I would hazard to guess that y'all don't either. Nobody I know really listens to him like that. And that's how many views he get. He get more views than CNN, Primetime, Fox, MSNBC, and he's a threat because they don't get that kind of attention. So they'd rather try to pigeonhole him as you're just a bad guy because you said this word or you've done these insensitive things without trying to recognize that bad people or quote unquote flawed individuals are capable of having complex thoughts within them, and they can be taught differently, and they can be receptive. If they're receptive to understanding differently, they can change and acknowledge their mistake, right? So just like Ben Shapiro, well, you got to just do different. The Jews' biggest concern was they wasn't allowed to go to Harvard and country clubs. Motherfucker. We just saw 3,000 pieces of literature where they called us nigger in the Library of Congress, and you talking about country clubs in Harvard. It's not the same. Jews own slaves. It's not the same. It's not the same thing. But that's how they want you to think. That is something you're doing wrong. And the reason they want you to do that is because it allows them to completely remove any responsibility on their part for participation or for stabilizing the system that continues our oppression. Words do hurt, and I will not deny it. But words hurt way less when you got a lot of money. Gad Sad just told y'all that. That's what he just said. Words hurt a lot less when you have organizations, legal and cultural, that will help to fight your battles for you so that you can go on living your wonderful life as a white man, or if you should so choose, an immigrant or a person of color in America with money.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to end the Twitter room now. I appreciate y'all getting in on here. I'm a little frustrated that echo should not be there. That Ernest is telling me. I don't know where it's coming from. So into who we're gonna. Oh, I know what it is. Go ahead.
One more video when you get done. That Dave Portnoy. It's important because these three brothers, they have a super PAC that were influential in 2020 of electing Joe Biden and getting Trump out of office. They were influential in raising money for Democratic candidates down the slate. Their name, the podcast is called Mediate or Midas Touch or something like that.
So where is that at?
So that's the one that I got in there. I said starting the 16-minute mark.
Okay.
So it's right above the 2 messages you sent. Yeah. And so the older guy, he's going to be on the right-hand corner, the lower right-hand corner, is he's Colin Kaepernick's lawyer.
He made.
The brother here, he's going to be on the left-hand corner. He works for what's his name? He works for some kind of I forget his name, not Scott Storch. The other guy, he got a name is S's. And then the other brother who's going to be on the top right corner used to be he's a head of social media or something for Ellen. Their father is a entertainment lawyer. I think P. Diddy is one of his clients. The Weeknd is one of his clients. So they got money, they got connections. And so Dave Portnoy, who does Barstool, he's kind of a crude guy, Boston, New England area, Boston guy, blue collar humor. And so listen to this exchange. And this is going to continue the conversation we're having.
What about this and what about that versus confronting the issues? When you condemn Joe Rogan, Dave, there shouldn't be a but. You should say that's a racist comment that hurts people.
Well, time out. But there is a but because I've been the victim of it too. If you take things totally out of context, there is a but.
Using the N-word out of context. Explain it to me.
All right. So if he's talking about whether you should use the N-word and he said it, and by the way, I said 70 times in 12 years, that's crazy. That's a lot. But if you're having a discussion about whether you should use it, that context matters. No?
I think that it does, and I think that you should not say the word, but that was not what even took place there.
Okay, but let's put this privately, and I'm not going to bring up. I have definitive proof of one of you three using the word in a text conversation with a friend from 2014 that somebody sent to me. It shouldn't be used, but I swear to God, I haven't.
Okay,
that's a lie.
Yeah,
you think I'd lie about that?
I think you would lie about that.
Does anyone here have a fiance named Lexi?
I think you'd absolutely lie about that.
Am I lying about what I just said?
And if someone has a fiance named Lexi, that is the decision right here?
No, I'm asking, is that
there's no right context whatsoever to anybody using the word.
Is Lexi a person in one of your lives?
Yes, Jordy's fiance is Lexi.
Yes, my fiance is Lexi.
And so that means Jordy did it.
I'm saying I have definitive proof.
Okay, if you have definitive proof.
But that doesn't define like everything. And I've never done it in a private conversation. I've done 3 times all on air. I think context very much matters. Very much. Like the resist programming,
you can pause.
I would never do it again. We hired Jarul and Ashanti at a super.
So this is why that matters. So like I said, the guy in the right bottom is Colin Kaepernick's lawyer. The guy above him, head of social media for Ellen, and the guy who got the text message showing that he said it worked for, I forget the guy's name. But nobody, now Dave Portnoy said, I'm not going to release the text message, whatever. And it's possible he will, I don't know. It's interesting that these individuals, when I had a Twitter, there was a Jewish guy, and he typed on Twitter, he was at the gym, he says, I don't see why I can't use the N-word when I'm at the gym and I hear the N-word on the radio and it's blasting full blast, I don't get it. And I said, if you use the N word, I'm gonna use the K word. He never said nothing back. But that's what you don't hear. None of these guys, they want to talk about being controversial and trying to figure out whether the words' usefulness and whether there's a place for it and trying to discuss whether it should be used at all. Ain't using the K word.
That's a fact.
Why not? Why is it that you want to discuss how we feel about a word, whether we use it in our community or not, that we have determined we don't like y'all using? Why is that discussion necessary? But to take that to another degree, now you three guys here, y'all social justice warriors. You're Colin Kaepernick's homeboys. You're a civil rights lawyer, right? But your brother using this, is somebody gonna cancel him? Or like Dave says, are we gonna cancel Jimmy Fallon because he was trying to portray Chris Rock? He wore blackface. Are we gonna cancel Jimmy Kimmel because he did blackface to look like Karl Malone? Are we gonna cancel Robert Downey Jr.? Are we gonna cancel Joy Behar? Are we gonna cancel Julianne Hough? Are we gonna cancel Ted Danson? Are we gonna cancel what's his name, Howard Stern? Or no, is it okay because they believe your political ideology? Because they're with your establishment narrative, it's okay. He wants to say that if you watch the whole clip, you can watch both of those clips if anybody wants to. They're both worth watching. But what the guys here try to say is those guys, Howard Stern from 20 years ago, he apologized. Who he apologized to? Because Joe Rogan didn't apologize to me, but y'all didn't ask me how I felt about it. Howard Stern didn't apologize to me, but you didn't ask me how I felt about that either. So how do you white guys get to tell me which one I got the right to be mad about and which one I don't have the right? I just got to concede that it's water under the bridge. How do you get to make that decision? So if we're going to cancel Joe Rogan, I'm 100% behind it. Except, my fear of censorship and my love of free speech. But I want all of y'all canceled. I want all of you canceled. And I want everybody gone. And that's the problem. Too many of these quote-unquote white allies want to be your ally because it don't cost you nothing. You Kaepernick's lawyer because you know you get a cut when the time comes for the bill to be paid. But you don't want money. That's what's going to make it right. I don't care what you call me as long as I'm getting broke off like I'm supposed to. I'll let my legal defense fund fight my battle. I'll let my well-funded, well-organized, well-run machine, cultural and legal organizations defend my community. I wouldn't have to worry about y'all and the kindness of your heart trying to shield me from the N-word. But you don't want to give up that. You don't want to give up your privilege and your prestige. You want to pay lip service and virtue signal on the internet and tell me Howard Stern ain't a racist when he been doing that shit for a long time. Too fucking long. And Robin been sitting next to him laughing the whole time.
That's a bar right there. Nah, I was going to say definitely though, like, he talking about, yeah, I mean, if we're going to give context to the word, we need to say it. I mean, it just goes to show you how bad they want to say it. It's just the only issue is that they know they're going to get some flack, or they know they're going to get labeled with the word racist or possibly being a supremacist or somebody that's of that mindset just from their understanding of the word and some of the offensive things they can say while having white skin. But the reality is that even if they get canceled, they could always come back. And I find that the biggest issue out of all of this is that when black folks get canceled, they damn near to go to jail or you never see them again unless they're homeless, and that's what they show on TV. But when white folks get canceled, shit, they might say nigger, they might say go back to Africa, call us a monkey, whatever. And a few years later, you'll see they still on their feet, you'll see they still in a position of power, and they still winning. And that's a problem.
I mean, Michael Richards, Kramer from Seinfeld. He had that outburst at that comedy club. 3 or 4 years later, they had him on another show with Kirstie Alley. The show didn't last, but he was on another show again, right? Even Quentin Tarantino. You watch some of his movies, and he says the word so much. I I don't really watch his movies like that in general. But I saw Pulp Fiction. You know, I was much older, and I saw it maybe like 5-6 years ago. And he says, so it's just like this guy got a problem. He got to have a problem because he just says it in every movie. And now the movie he got the most flack for it is Django, in which, I mean, historical context, I think that was the one he was most justified. Pulp Fiction was in the 90s.
Yeah, now let's give it a little bit of nuance. Darvell, can you share that link I just sent, or at least the screen once you click that link? Because like white folks keep saying it's just the word. But what happens when you're using this word towards a specific group of people and you do got ill intentions and it is linked to the racial history of it and you're in a position of power, let's say you're a cop or a judge.
Google search results?
Yeah. Just the screen, because I want to show all of the different articles, because it shows like Tennessee cops, Florida cops. You got all of these different. So that first one, Black school resource officer fired by Tampa police for using N-word. That's a Black person. Keep going through it. Oh shit! You know what? They got all Black cops at the top few searches for it.
Capital, yeah. South Carolina, Tampa.
Yep.
Franklin, Tennessee. Oh, I know. For high-fiving a man. What? High-five the man who used the N-word. Oh, geez. That's just down the street for me. That's like 10 minutes for me. Black police officer fired for using the N-word. CPD officer fired for using N-word. That's Chicago. Somewhere in the UK? No, they're talking about.
They're talking about the same Tampa Bay incident.
Jeez,
so you see that?
I told you, Florida, man.
No, but they really put that one Black officer saying the N-word on repeat. Like we don't know the history of white cops and these sheriff gangs that have been using this N-word and using it maliciously to attack Black Americans who descend from slavery in these high Black population cities. And so what I was hoping to portray or paint with this just screen share is that all across the U.S., you got various instances of cops using this language. You got judges that use this language, and I can guarantee you that plays a role in how they interact with Black people daily in this country. And so even if Joe, those white folks we just looked at Barstool, even if Joe Rogan is saying the N-word, there's people who's just a common Joe Schmo, like a cop or a judge, who's also using this word. And those people have power, and I think that's important to keep in mind.
So we got to shout out our Twitch people. There have been people tuning in from Twitch from time to time, So I got a little Twitch stream going on over there. We all over the place, y'all. We on the
everywhere
Twitch,
now,
we on
bro.
the YouTube, we on the Facebook. We was trying to be on the Twitter live, but the Twitter space started causing an echo, and I didn't believe Ernest until I was getting text messages. I didn't know.
Hey, we were dropping too much knowledge for Twitter, bro.
Hey, I'm like, it's hella echoes. I had turned my mic down. I'm like, damn, I can still hear it.
Nah, man. So yeah, shout out to the Twitch people. Zazy, is that his name? And Bill Synthetic hit us up earlier. So we out here trying to spread some knowledge, and we're gonna keep it moving. So okay, how you want to wrap this up, guys? Because we've been pushing it over about 130 minutes.
I think we could wrap. I think my last statements on this whole show run today is that when we look at it, Joe Biden. Let's go back to Joe Biden. When we look at somebody like Joe Biden and we look at his history and all the comments that he's made about the Black community, we know that he is someone who's definitely used the N-word, at least in his mind, or he might have said it to Strom Thurmond or somebody, one of these Klan members.
His son said it in text messages.
So there you go. Now, what I wanted to say about Joe Biden was that, supporting this, was that an act or was that like an executive order or what was that to get these?
These drug joints?
Yeah, what was
kits.
that?
Let me see. It was an American Rescue Plan.
All right, so it's inside the American Rescue Plan, right? So, it just goes to show you that the things they think will come in handy to help our people are never exactly what it needs to be. And that's why we always got to still advocate for reparations. Another reason why we got to advocate for reparations is because the only way we'll be able to change the media's narrative of degrading Black Americans by way of blackface, by way of improper images, by way of, words that should not just be even said, even if it's amongst our own community, is by way of a program or some sort that can actually demonstrate a different narrative and as well as educate the population the right way as to how to move about in American society. And so, last but not least, I'll just take Gerard's stance and state that we have no permanent friends, we have no permanent enemies, we only have permanent interests. And with that is peace, love, and reparations.
All right, so hey, I want to take this question. I think we answered this question that Zay-Z just sent us. And I do want to answer it. He asked, when you guys say use the N-word, is there any nuance in that? Like, does context matter? What's your opinion on that? So he may have not caught the earlier part of the discussion. But in essence, within the community, people use it. It still carries the same weight because that's where the word came from. It came from the disparagement of our people. But the intention behind the folks who use it within the community is different. Unfortunately, although the intention is different, the reasoning that they're using it with abandon of the history has to do with the pathology that results from the oppression and how our community has been on the bottom cast of America for so long, to the point where, just like Joe Rogan was saying for a few minutes there in the clip we played of Joe Rogan, this stuff is stacked up, right? This is an accrual of everything from the past. So you end up with people adapting this word in a different way. It's still the same word, but they wanted to have a different meaning of it. I don't know if you guys want to chime in to answer his question.
Yeah, I'll say in the community, the word still isn't recognized as of recently due to, like, we could say music and a change in the sentiment how the young people use it, that word has taken on a different meaning. But when we look at our grandparents, ain't none of the young folks calling their grandparents that word. And that's because that it's still degrading, that it's still disrespectful. And so it'll never become a word that's recognized by all Black people, because we all got a different opinion about the word. But to what Darvell was saying, it just has less venom when it comes from somebody within our ethnic group or within our family, because we know they don't mean what we just read from the Jim Crow Museum when they said it to us as our brother or our sister.
You know what? He came back with a good additional clarification, and he said, well, let's say these rap songs that are running around here, as we know, in terms of not only the decadent veil is coined by Antonio Moore, but also the essence of real Black artists who are coming very largely, they're being carried on the backs of people who aren't, like, Black people co-sign them, and then white money comes in and puts them on top. He's saying, well, if I'm just trying to enjoy music, and many of my friends know that I've talked about this, because what happens so basically says, if he's enjoying a song and the lyrics have the N-word in it, and he's just trying to embody the song, and so he's repeating the lyrics, and then he says that same word exactly as it's said in the song because he's just repeating the lyrics, would that be frowned upon? And I think that's why I have such a big problem with our artists today. But then again, they're nothing more than just an outgrowth of our community. They represent, I would say, some of the extremes of our community put on display for performative edification, for consumption by the greater community or the greater society. And the problem with music is that people love the beat. They love the harmony of the beat. They love the sound of that. That's what our bodies and our minds really react to. That's what we love about music. But when the lyrics are laid over it, and hopefully the lyrics are telling a good story, an accurate story, or something that at least is a representation of reality. But unfortunately, what you have is you do have people who tell you a real accurate story of reality, and then you have people who tell you an exaggerated story of something they never lived. But in either case, whether it be true or false, they use the word that's already in the community in their lyrics. And because you provide it in such a seductive, attractive, but most importantly, addictive form, which is music, it becomes very, very, very quickly viral. And people who want to embody that viral music start to try to do that through speaking the lyrics, because you're just trying to enjoy it. And next thing you know, you're saying the word. And I have a big issue with the amount of how would I say, the amount of the lack of not awareness.
Is it leniency?
No, I'm thinking about how they don't they're almost too ignorant to know what they're doing.
Yeah,
that's
the point. That's awareness, and it's the last thing I'll say. That's awareness, because you're saying it at a concert because you like the song and the music playing, and the whole crowd saying it, and the artist who wrote the song telling you to say it. That's one thing, and it doesn't make it right. But let's say you saying that same song and you walking through the streets of Chicago, LA, or Detroit, and you're in an all-black community where there is high poverty and lack of awareness or social understanding for different people who choose to use it. You're putting yourself at risk. That's what I say.
I'm really a big anti-censorship person, just because, especially this last couple of years, it's really shown how the dagger or the blade of censorship can easily be turned back on any of us. And so, I remember when we buried the word, the NAACP buried it after Michael Richards did that rant. Paul Mooney said he wasn't going to never say it again. Damon Wayans came out and did a set because he said he wasn't going to let, I forget his name now, be the last. Maybe his name ain't Michael Richards. I forget his name, but he played Kramer. He said he wasn't going to be the last. He wasn't going to let him be the last person to say it. And so, in a way, for me, the word, I don't care that much. Personally, I understand why people do. But on that same token, I think if you think in your organization, in your group, that it's fine for you to use words that people in my community do not feel personally as a group happy with you using, you have to be open to me using your slurs for you. You see what I'm saying? And I don't mean that like a tit for tat, but I mean, if we're going to decontextualize the venom from these words, like if you're reciting a poem, and I feel like with a song, I mean, a lot of people try to say, oh, don't say those words if you're saying a rap. But it's like if you're reciting a poem, or if you're reciting a speech, or if you're reciting a monologue from a movie or a play, how can I expect you, when you read Huckleberry Finn, if you read Uncle Tom's Cabin, or, those kind of books, how can I expect you to read those books and get the historical the shame that a person feels if they read that word and say it publicly in a classroom is the kind of reverence that you need to have for that word and understanding the context of its use within that time period and how the people felt and how, the reverberations around for people who that affects in that way. So, that's for me. I think it does. I think context does matter. I think it does matter. Like Dangerous Dan is saying, from what I heard, he was repeating it. I don't know because I didn't watch the clip, so that's why I'm not, but I think context does matter. I think if you're saying the word within a certain context, it's got to be looked at it through that context, right? Because at that point, then you get to a point where you're trying to whitewash or clean up history in a way that is ahistorical, like that Bridgerton show where you got the Queen of England as a black lady. Makes no sense because you're trying to divorce reality from history. You're trying to rewrite it in a way that is not historically accurate. However, I feel like, you have to check the room you in. If you're around people and you have a feeling that that word is offensive to them or that they're not going to take kindly to that, you have to understand where you are and take those precautions for your own self. Because I mean, just because I say I'm okay, just because I say that, you might be might not be 5 guys in the room like me, or 5 people, or 500. Yeah. So context matters to me. It is a nuanced conversation, but it is also important to understand why there is a need for so many people to say this word when so many people are upset about this word.
Man, it's so nuanced that certain parts of the South, they might use that word, but you can't call no black person a boy. So a man, or you know what I'm saying?
Oh,
and
yeah.
So that's in the South. That's for black people and for white folks. So you never know how some how some black people might take the N word. It's your risk to say it. Just like how you never know if somebody will take disrespect when you be like, shut up, boy, and talking like that, because you never know if that black person takes that word in the way you saying it in the way that it was originally intended.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one because, would you even say that's a sensitivity to the point of even like, that's my boy over there? Could that even be taken that differently?
No, I think they'll
well, usually it's still, usually in that context, it's not. Because it's your friend or whatever, and so it's cool. But that's kind of the thing. Like, when I lived in Georgia, the guys, they would just say that, like the older guys from the South would be some white guys, and they would call each other boy, and I would be like, shit, y'all keep that to yourself. You know what I'm saying? But like, that's just my northern proclivities or whatever. Going to Georgia, going to Atlanta, and so that's the thing. Like, and that's ultimately like how I had to come to it. If you allow the N-word to be the word that disarms you mentally or whatever, any word is going to be used, whether it's boy, monkey, whatever. Any word is going to have that power. So we have to figure out a way to understand its reverence, its historical context. And I ain't saying don't be upset, but we have to figure out a way to continue to push forward. And I'm not saying we haven't. I'm not saying that we haven't. Yeah. But that's the, any word that you give power will be a word that's bad for you if you allow it to be. And so for me, a lot of times I get more upset if a person, now when I was in Chicago, honestly, I was in Chicago downtown when I was in this college program, and we was at McDonald's. It was a McDonald's. I don't know. It's like Rainforest Cafe is around there, like the Weber Grill restaurant, and some McDonald's down there. I don't know if it's still there because this was years ago. And these two white chicks, we was in like a college program, and it was like, a lot of black students, and not exclusively. And the white chicks they walked out. They said, "We don't like you, niggers." And they walked out in Chicago, like it was at nighttime, and they said the shit loud at McDonald's, bro. And so it's just like, I get more upset that you would say that to me with the intention of making it make me upset than I get upset that you actually said it.
Yeah, that's
a good
point.
Saying, like, oh, you gonna do that shit? You couldn't come up with nothing better than this, you piece of shit. That's how I feel.
That's a good point.
Again,
so. Well, yeah, no, that was a good point. Shout out to Dangerous Dan. He made some comments here. He's just kind of talking about it there. He grew up in the South and that never actually heard it himself until he was in the military. And so, yeah, it's interesting. I think you two put a very good context to it. Like, it's very contextually sensitive, but still, even though the context can matter, if you're around somebody who don't appreciate it as black, it can turn ugly very quick. Yeah. And so it's basically
check the room.
Check the room. And so, and that all points to how we're going to wrap this up. It all points to the reality that word is a problem, even though it has varying levels of lethality, depending on the context or whatever, and who's in the room, whether or not it's going to result in a backlash to you. The fact that it's not like friend, it's not like homie, it's not, even as nearly blind as, dummy or whatever. That should tell you that there's some weight to it, and it really is best stayed away from if you can. Because we're trying to push back against it across all the space. Now, internally to the black community, we got work to do. But like we said, that comes with the reparations package on top of that. So I'm gonna wrap it up with that. At least that's my last words. What y'all got, Stedman and Ernest?
Yeah. So again, I think watching that Joe Rogan clip when he talked to Ben Shapiro, I think that really enlightens to the nuance of him as an individual. And I hope that understanding how he has really taken a lot of attention from mainstream media, how he does not push people to a specific political ideology, but more like what you would consider free thinking. He's a threat to the mainstream power establishment. And so they want to silence him as best they can. And I hope that I've illustrated that they tried to do that because through this incident, while there are other people who have done this, who have completely gone unscathed, and like I said, I'm not an advocate of censorship necessarily, but you have people who belong to certain groups who push political ideologies that are favorable to the establishment, and they're allowed to exist doing things that I would think are far worse than what Joe Rogan has done. And so we have to understand that context too. I'm conspiracy brother, so this is who I am. I'm always going to look at the conspiratorial part of all this, because to me, what's happening behind the scenes is more important than what's happening above, in front of the scene. And so, again, I'm not making a defense of it. I haven't looked into it because it didn't really bother me that much one way or the other, personally. But, I think Joe Rogan has good moments on his show, and he talks about interesting topics. controversial topics that I think people need to hear about. And I think as a proponent of no censorship and free speech, I think he's a valuable asset to the free world. And I will leave it at that.
No, yeah, and I already, gave my closing comments a little earlier. I want to thank everybody for coming in, for tuning in today's show. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe, and be on the lookout for us. Our next show should be around, I want to say, sometime in the 20th. We're looking at the 22nd for our next show, so stay in tune. It's Black History Month, and we want to get y'all the history, we want to get y'all the knowledge, and we definitely want to get y'all the perspective. Peace.
Yeah. Hey, just stay tuned, right? Because you never know when we pop up, y'all. Be cool.